All right, let's talk about figure of 8 sutures. These are sutures that we place for focal hemostasis. We're going to switch it up a little bit with our suture. We've got a 1 chromic on a CTX needle. I tend to use a CTX for closing the fascia and for closing the uterus, not with chromic. But as we pull this out, we can compare the size of this needle, the CTX, to, this was our CT1 that we just used for our running or locking suture. So you can see the difference in size there between CT1 in the needle driver and the CTX that I'm holding. So the CTX, just a little bit of a hardier needle, is quite a bit longer, has a bigger radius, and so hence diameter to the full circle that it makes. What we've got here, I created a small defect here. We're going to say that that's our area of bleeding. Let's just get a little bit more zoomed in on that. So one area of bleeding, we don't really need to do a running suture because we don't have a length of defect that we're closing. To do an interrupted, we could try to do a single interrupted across that, but if there are blood vessels that are coming in making this little area bleed, doing a single interrupted and kind of tightening across this line, or really any single line of pressure, might not do the job. So if we really wanted to make sure this is hemostatic, what we do is come up above it, and this is a little bit of a big needle for this, but we come up above that area with our first pass. So you can see we've got there above, and then our second pass we come just below it, so just keeping that area of bleeding right in the middle of our suture. And then as we tighten this down, what we see we've got is a nice area of compression, because now as we tie this, we've got kind of that X, or 8, so figure of 8. But we've got compression really surrounding that area of bleeding. So no matter which direction those vessels are coming in from, or if they're coming up from a little bit deeper, we've got good compression there. So again, for me, I've got the needle here on the left in my needle driver. So I set that to the side, keep that covered up and protected. I've got my free end here in the right. I'm going to pull that through just a little bit more. And so again, what I do is I don't cross strands in the scenario, but just come over thumb, make that loop, swing it through. And figure of 8 sutures are one area where I do tend to do surgeon's knots, because oftentimes you've got a pretty big area here that you're trying to compress, and we really want that first throw to remain tight to keep that tissue under tension while we do our second throw, completing our first square knot. So a surgeon's knot would look like we make our loop, we go through just like we normally would, but then instead of pulling this tight, we just go and loop again. So again, over the thumb, pull that loop through. So now we've got 2 wraps of the suture together. You can see it's a little bigger, a little bit harder to pull down, but as we pull that, it really compresses that, and now we can take tension off of it, and it stays quite tight. So that's the benefit of the surgeon's knot, is that when you cinch it down just with a single throw, so to speak, although we have 2 wraps, it keeps it nice and tight. So again, that first time was over thumb, so second time loop over index finger, pull that through, and there you go. And then again over thumb, and we'll just do a single throw here, and then over finger. So that's 4 throws, 2 complete square knots, which for chromic is 1 more than you need. And there you go. So you can see that we've got just kind of a bunching up of that tissue, and that's our figure of 8. We'll do 1 more of those here just to kind of highlight it. So let's make another little defect kind of here. So let's say we've got a little bit of a bigger area. And again, not quite enough length here to do a running. Maybe one or two interrupteds, but like we saw over here, the tissue between the loop of interrupted, there's not a lot of tension here in between. So for our figure of 8, and the one we did down here, we went kind of horizontal, I guess, to the defect itself. So this time let's go vertical. Let's start here. And then for our second throw, some people like to kind of grab onto these two and kind of pull them up. That's perfectly fine if you like that. And then for our second, we'll come here like that and pull that through. And again, we were creating this kind of this X shape to close over that. Just pull that through so our tail's not quite so long. And then again, I'm gonna do over the thumb once, twice for our surgeon's knot, and just a slow, steady cinch that down, and then over finger, come back over thumb. So that's 3 throws, 1.5 square knots. That's appropriate for chromic. Cut that. And again, you can see how it just really bunches up all of that tissue. So that's our figure of 8.